He thought that providing comfort and stability was enough to be a good father. But when he returned from his trip and found his children in the doghouse, his world collapsed. The truth about the woman he trusted came to light before everyone, revealing unimaginable abuse. If this beautiful story of triumph and love interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. Continuing. In the luxurious outskirts of Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, stood the Alistair Mansion, a palace of marble and glass that reflected the sun like liquid gold at dusk. Gregory Alistair, 45, was a man who had built his empire of hotels and restaurants with relentless determination and endless hours away from home. He had started with a small restaurant in Chinatown, San Francisco, and now owned luxury establishments from the French Quarter in New Orleans to South Beach in Miami. "Dad, look what I drew for you!" Sophia's voice, his 8-year-old daughter, echoed through the mansion's wide corridors as she held up a colorful drawing. Gregory barely looked up from his laptop. "Not now, Princess. Daddy is solving a problem at the hotel in Washington, D.C. His fingers continued to dance across the keyboard, while Sophia slowly lowered the paper, her smile disappearing like the sun behind clouds. In the baby seat near the window, Bernard, just 10 months old, watched the scene with his large dark eyes. Ever since Camilla, Gregory's wife, had passed away during the youngest child's birth, the mansion seemed larger and emptier, despite the team of staff discreetly moving about. "Mr. Alistair, Ms. Morrison is arriving. The gate has already been opened." The voice of the housekeeper, Mrs. Eleanor, announced from the doorway. Sophia's face hardened at the sound of that name. Deborah Morrison had entered their lives 4 months ago, first as a business consultant, then as Gregory's girlfriend, and now, after a hasty marriage, as her stepmother. The sound of high heels echoed on the marble. Deborah, 34, with a body sculpted by exclusive gyms and designer clothes, entered as if on a runway. Perfectly straightened black hair, impeccable red lipstick, discreet but visibly expensive jewelry. Her smile, however, did not reach her eyes. "My love, I missed you." She approached Gregory, placing a calculated kiss on his lips. Her eyes, however, landed on Sophia, who clutched the drawing to her chest. "Sophia, dear, shouldn't you be studying? Exams are coming up." "It's Saturday," Sophia murmured, taking a step back. Deborah's smile wavered for a fraction of a second. "Even so, discipline is important. Your father didn't build this empire by playing around." She turned to Gregory. "I need to show you the plans for the charity project we're organizing. It will give excellent publicity to the hotels." Gregory closed his laptop and followed Deborah to the office, leaving Sophia standing in the middle of the room, her drawing forgotten. Mrs. Eleanor, who had been watching everything from the corner, approached the girl. "Come, my dear, let's put this beautiful drawing in your special album. One day your father will have time to see them all," the grey-haired woman said, gently leading Sophia by the hand. In the following weeks, Gregory embarked on another of his business trips, this time to inaugurate a resort in Maui, Hawaii. As always, he left detailed instructions about childcare and bank transfers for all expenses. "I'll be back in 2 weeks. Deborah will take care of everything. If you need anything, call me," he said, quickly kissing Sophia's forehead and stroking Bernard's head. The girl tried to prolong the hug, but Gregory was already checking messages on his phone as he walked to the door. "Dad," Sophia called, when he was already on the threshold. "You're going to miss my ballet recital." Gregory paused, his face showing a flicker of guilt. "I'll ask them to record it. We'll watch it together when I get back, I promise." And he left without seeing the tears held back in his daughter's eyes. As soon as Gregory's car disappeared through the gate, something in the mansion's air changed. Deborah's smile completely vanished, like a mask being removed. "Sophia, come here," she called in a voice that no longer tried to hide its coldness. The girl approached hesitantly. "From now on, we'll have new rules. This house is a mess, and I won't tolerate it." Deborah crossed her arms. "After school, you'll help Mrs. Eleanor with the tidying. No ballet until your grades improve." "But Dad said I could go to ballet," Sophia protested, feeling her heart race. A threatening smile appeared on Deborah's lips. "Your father isn't here, is he? And when he comes back, I'm sure he'll understand that discipline is more important than prancing around in ballet slippers." That night, Sophia discovered that her place at the dinner table had been changed. Instead of the chair next to her father's, she was placed at the opposite end, far from everyone. The plate served to her contained only rice and beans, while Deborah savored salmon and asparagus. "Children need simple food," Deborah justified when Mrs. Eleanor looked confused at Sophia's plate. "And the baby will have dinner later, after I've finished my meal in peace." Days turned into a routine of chores and silences. Sophia was woken at dawn to tidy her room and then help with breakfast. School became her only refuge. Upon returning, more tasks awaited her. Cleaning Bernard's toys, folding napkins, organizing drawers. Mrs. Eleanor tried to help discreetly. "Let me finish that, child," she would whisper when Deborah wasn't around. But the housekeeper, who had worked in the house since before Sophia's birth, had her limitations. At 63, she needed the job to support the granddaughter she was raising alone. One afternoon, while Sophia was taking care of Bernard and trying to finish her homework, the baby started to cry. Desperate to calm him before Deborah heard, Sophia didn't notice when a glass of juice on the side table was knocked over. The orange liquid spread across the imported white rug. "What have you done?" Deborah's voice cut through the air like a whip. Sophia turned, petrified. Deborah stood in the doorway, her eyes fixed on the orange stain. In a swift movement, she crossed the room and grabbed Sophia's arm with enough force to leave marks. I'll clean it," Sophia stammered, trying to pull away. "You never learn, do you? Is this your gratitude for everything I do?" Deborah dragged Sophia down the hallway, holding her arm tightly. The baby, abandoned in his seat, began to cry louder. "Pick up your brother. I'm going to teach you both a lesson." Sophia, trembling, picked up Bernard. The sky outside the window was darkening rapidly. A summer storm was approaching, with distant thunder. Deborah violently opened the back door and pushed Sophia out, who was trying to shield the baby in her arms. The rain began to fall, cold and relentless. "Where is that old dog your father insisted on keeping?" Deborah looked around the garden until her eyes landed on an abandoned wooden structure near the back wall, the old doghouse of Gregory's Labrador, Rex, who had passed away 2 years ago. "Perfect," Deborah murmured, pushing Sophia towards the doghouse. "Since you both like to make such a mess, you can stay here until you learn." "Please, no," Sophia pleaded, feeling the first drops of rain on her face, mixing with tears. "Bernard is too small, he might get sick. You should have thought of that before you ruined my rug." Deborah pushed both children into the small wooden structure. "Absolute silence, or you'll stay here all night." The sound of the makeshift lock was followed by the sight of Deborah's back as she returned to the house while the rain intensified. Inside the dark doghouse, Sophia hugged Bernard tightly, trying to warm him with her own body. The baby, sensing his sister's fear, cried softly. "It's going to be okay," Sophia whispered, rocking him gently. "Daddy will be back soon, and everything will be fine." But her words sounded hollow even to her own ears. The darkness of the doghouse seemed to swallow them, as the relentless rain beat against the wooden roof. From the kitchen window, Mrs. Eleanor watched the scene, her wrinkled face contorted with anguish. Her aged hands squeezed a dishcloth so tightly that her knuckles were white. She wanted to run out there, rescue the children, but fear paralyzed her, not for herself but for the granddaughter who depended on her income. Hours slowly passed. The sky grew darker, not just from the approaching night, but from the storm that was now raging with full force over Los Angeles. Sophia's sobs were muffled by the sound of the rain as she hummed lullabies to Bernard, trying to make him forget the cold and fear. It was then that, through the curtain of water, headlights illuminated the mansion gate. A powerful engine broke through the sound of the storm. The silhouette of a black Mercedes became visible. Gregory Alistair had returned earlier than expected. Gregory parked the car at the mansion's entrance, shielding himself from the rain with his jacket raised over his head. The trip to Maui had been cut short when one of his partners pulled out of the investment at the last minute. Frustrated, he decided to return to replan the strategy without notifying anyone. What a silent reception, he thought, finding the mansion dark strange. Usually Sophia would run to greet him, no matter the hour. Upon opening the door, he was met only by the tinkling of the crystals on the immense chandelier in the entrance, swaying slightly with the wind that had entered with him. The silence was disturbing. "Sophia! Bernard!" he called, dropping his briefcase in the entrance hall. "Deborah?" He heard hurried footsteps and saw Deborah descending the stairs, wearing a silk robe. Her face showed genuine shock at seeing him. "Gregory! What a surprise! We weren't expecting you so soon," she said, quickly composing a smile and adjusting her hair. "Why didn't you say you were coming back? Where are my children?" he asked, ignoring her question and looking around. "Sophia is in her room grounded. She had terrible behavior today," Deborah replied, approaching to kiss him. And Bernard is sleeping, of course. It's almost 10 at night. Something in her tone didn't sound right. Gregory knew negotiation techniques well and could recognize when someone was trying to manipulate him. What terrible behavior would that be? He asked, subtly stepping away from her embrace. She spilled juice on the Persian rug, that very expensive one we bought in Dubai, and when I called her out, she threw a terrible tantrum. You know how dramatic children can be. Deborah shrugged as if it were a trivial incident. I sent her to her room without dessert. Discipline, as we always discussed. Gregory walked towards the stairs but stopped when he heard a noise coming from the kitchen. He changed direction and found Mrs. Eleanor, who seemed to be hiding something under her apron. "Eleanor, what is it?" he asked, noticing the housekeeper's agitation. "Nothing, sir. Just preparing some tea for the night," the woman replied, but her eyes avoided his and her hands trembled slightly. "Where is Sophia? And don't tell me she's in her room, because I just passed an open door," Gregory insisted, his fatherly instinct alerting him that something was very wrong. Mrs. Eleanor quickly glanced at the kitchen window, which overlooked the back garden. It was only a second, but enough for Gregory to follow her gaze. Through the curtain of rain, he caught a glimpse of the old doghouse, abandoned since Rex had passed away. "What's out there, Eleanor?" His voice became authoritative, the same one he used in difficult negotiations. "Sir," Mrs. Eleanor began, gathering courage, "the girl and the baby, Miss Morrison." "What?" Gregory felt his blood run cold. "Don't tell me that." "Gregory, don't listen to her," Deborah interrupted, who had followed him to the kitchen. "Eleanor is getting senile. I told you I need to hire someone younger." Without waiting for more explanations, Gregory rushed to the back door and ran out into the garden, immediately lashed by the torrential rain. Mud stained his Italian shoes as he ran towards the doghouse. As he approached, he heard a faint sound, a lullaby, sung by a child's voice choked with tears. He knelt in the mud and saw, through the small opening of the door, his daughter, soaked and trembling, cradling her brother in her arms. "Sophia!" he shouted, pulling the locked door with force until the old wood gave way. The girl's eyes, red from crying, widened at the sight of her father. For a second she seemed not to believe it was real. "Daddy?" she whispered, as if fearing it was a hallucination. Gregory picked them both up, feeling Sophia's soaked clothes and Bernard's feverish body. The baby was too quiet, his lips slightly bluish. Fury bubbled inside Gregory, but his focus now was to get his children out of that place. "What happened here?" he asked, carrying them both back into the house. "Who did this to you?" Sophia merely pressed her face against her father's chest, as if afraid to answer. Her small fingers clutched his shirt desperately. At the kitchen door, Deborah waited, her face a mask of feigned concern. "My God, what were they doing out there? Sophia, did you take your brother to play in the rain? How could you be so irresponsible?" Her voice was filled with theatrical indignation. Gregory looked at her, incredulous. Don't you dare try to twist this." "Gregory, dear, I know you're upset, but—" "Silence!" His voice thundered louder than the storm outside. "I don't want to hear another word from you until I understand exactly what happened here." He took the children upstairs, straight to his own bedroom. He called Mrs. Eleanor to help dry and warm them. The housekeeper brought towels, dry clothes, and hot tea for Sophia, moving with the efficiency of someone who could finally act without fear. "I'm calling a doctor," Gregory said, noticing that Bernard remained too quiet. "No need, sir," Mrs. Eleanor replied. "Dr. Richard lives nearby. I've already called him. He should be arriving." While they waited, Gregory sat on the edge of the bed, watching Sophia, who held the teacup with still trembling hands. Bernard was wrapped in blankets in the housekeeper's lap. "Sophia, my princess, I need you to tell me what happened. No one will punish you for telling the truth, I promise." The girl looked hesitantly at the door, as if expecting Deborah to appear at any moment. "She'll be angry," Sophia murmured, "and she'll put me back there when you leave." Those words were like a dagger to Gregory's heart. "Who, Sophia? Was it Deborah who put you both out there?" "In the doghouse." Sophia nodded slowly, silent tears rolling down her still pale face. "Why? What happened?" "I spilled juice on the rug," she replied, so softly that Gregory had to lean in to hear. "It wasn't on purpose. I was taking care of Bernard and doing homework at the same time." "And because of that she locked you both out there?" "In the rain." The disbelief in Gregory's voice was palpable. "It's not the first time," Mrs. Eleanor intervened, unable to contain herself any longer. Forgive me, sir, I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid of losing my job and my granddaughter. Continue, Eleanor. I need to know everything. The housekeeper took a deep breath. Ever since you married Ms. Morrison, things changed. At first they were small things. Different meals for Sophia, too many chores for a child her age. Then they got worse. Punishments for any reason, shouting when you weren't here. She's left them both without food. Sophia has been taking care of her brother practically alone. Gregory felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. How had he not noticed? How had he been so blind? Why didn't you tell me, Sophia? Why didn't you call me? The girl lowered her eyes. She said you wouldn't believe me, that you'd be angry and send us to a boarding school far from here. The sound of the doorbell interrupted the conversation. It was the doctor, Dr. Richard, an old family friend who had attended Camilla's pregnancy. While the doctor examined the children, Gregory left the room and found Deborah in the hallway, seemingly composed again. Gregory, I know it looks bad, but it's not what you're thinking, she began, in a conciliatory tone. I had a moment of weakness, I admit, but you know how difficult Sophia can be, so rebellious. I just wanted to teach her a lesson for her own good. I never imagined she would take the baby to that place. It was a terrible misunderstanding. Gregory looked at the woman in front of him, truly seeing her for the first time. How had he allowed himself to be deceived by that facade? How had he placed his children in the care of that person? Get out of my sight, he said, with an unnerving calm. Get out of my sight before I forget I am a civilized man. You can't talk to me like that, I'm your wife. Not for much longer, he replied, turning his back on her and returning to the room where the doctor was finishing examining the children. How are they? He asked anxiously. Dr. Richard had a grave expression. Sophia has early hypothermia, but nothing a good rest won't solve. Bernard has a high fever, and I'm hearing the beginning of bronchitis. I'll prescribe antibiotics, but keep an eye on him. If the fever doesn't break in the next few hours, we'll have to take him to the hospital. Gregory nodded, feeling the weight of guilt crush him. Thank you, Richard. And I'm sorry to call you so late. Don't worry about it, the doctor replied, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. But Gregory, what happened? How did these children end up in that doghouse in the rain? A mistake, Gregory replied, looking at his children nestled in the large bed. A mistake I will never repeat. After the doctor left, Gregory instructed Mrs. Eleanor to stay with the children and went downstairs. He found Deborah in the office on the phone, speaking in a low voice. Yes, just a setback. He came back early. No, of course I'll resolve it. Divorce is not in my plans, believe me. Noticing Gregory in the doorway, she quickly hung up. It was just a friend, she was worried. Gregory approached the desk and opened his laptop. A few clicks, and the screen showed images from the mansion's security cameras. Cameras Deborah apparently didn't know about. Let's see what happened today, frame by frame, he said, navigating to the afternoon recordings. Deborah visibly paled. Is this really necessary? I already said it was a misunderstanding. Necessary? No? Illuminating? Yes. Gregory rotated the laptop, showing the clear scene. Deborah dragging Sophia by the arm, forcing her to pick up Bernard, pushing them out into the rain, and locking them in the doghouse. He fast-forwarded the video, showing Deborah returning inside, pouring herself a glass of wine, and calmly sitting down to watch television, while the children remained trapped outside for hours. Now please explain to me, what kind of misunderstanding is this? Deborah's eyes changed. Fear gave way to something cold and calculating. Don't think you can discard me so easily, Gregory. I have a very well-drafted marriage contract. A contract that will be annulled due to child abuse against my children. Child abuse, Deborah, that voids any contract. She gave a dry laugh. Prove it. It's my word against that of an 8-year-old child and an old senile employee. Gregory pointed to the laptop. I have more than enough proof, and it's not just from today. He clicked on another folder, revealing weeks of catalogued recordings. I installed these cameras after Sophia started having nightmares. Father's instinct, perhaps. Deborah's face contorted into a mask of fury. You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am, my family, my contacts? I'll destroy you and your businesses. Try, Gregory replied simply, standing up. Now get out of my house. Your belongings will be sent tomorrow to wherever you indicate, and be grateful I'm not calling the police right now. This isn't over, Gregory, she threatened, grabbing her purse. No one humiliates me like this. It was over the moment you touched my children, he replied, opening the office door. Leave, Deborah, before I change my mind about the police. When the front door closed behind Deborah, Gregory felt an enormous weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by another, that of guilt and responsibility. How had he been so blind? How could he compensate his children for the suffering his selfishness and negligence had caused? He slowly climbed the stairs, returning to the room where Sophia and Bernard finally slept. Mrs. Eleanor watched over them, sitting in an armchair near the bed. "Is she gone?" the housekeeper asked in a low voice. "Yes." "Forever," Gregory replied, sitting on the edge of the bed and watching Sophia's serene face in her sleep. The girl clung protectively to her brother, even while sleeping. "Will you be all right, sir?" Mrs. Eleanor asked, concerned about her employer, who seemed to have aged 10 years that night. Gregory gently touched Sophia's hair, still slightly damp. "I will be. But more importantly, they will be all right. I will ensure that whatever it takes." From the bedroom window, the storm began to subside. The rain became softer, as if nature responded to the change within the Allister mansion. The night was still long, but for the first time in months there was hope for a clearer dawn. The sun rose timidly over Los Angeles the next morning, as if testing the ground after the previous night's storm. Inside the Allister mansion, Gregory had not slept. He had spent the entire night sitting beside his children, checking Bernard's fever and observing Sophia's restless sleep. "Sir, you need to rest a bit," Mrs. Eleanor murmured, entering the room with a breakfast tray. "How you won't help the children if you get sick too." Gregory accepted the cup she offered him, feeling the warmth of the liquid heat his cold hands. "How could I let this happen, Eleanor? How did I not notice?" The housekeeper sat in the nearby chair, her tired eyes showing that she too had not slept. "You were suffering, trying to find a way after Ms. Camilla's passing. People like Ms. Morrison are experts at taking advantage of moments of fragility." "That doesn't absolve me," he replied, watching Sophia begin to stir, signaling she would soon wake. "Camilla trusted me to protect them." Bernard coughed in his sleep, a worrying sound that made Gregory check his temperature again. He was still feverish, but not as much as the night before. Sophia slowly opened her eyes. For a moment she seemed confused to be in her father's room. Then the memory of the previous night returned, and she looked around, apprehensive. "Is she gone?" she asked, her voice small and hesitant. "Yes, Princess. She's not coming back ever again," Gregory assured her, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I'm so deeply sorry for what happened." Sophia studied her father's face for a long moment, as if looking for signs that he truly believed her. "You're not angry with me?" "About the rug?" The question broke Gregory's heart. "My love, I would never be angry about something like that. It was an accident. Accidents happen." Sophia looked at Bernard, who was still sleeping. "Will he be okay? I tried to protect him from the rain, but it was so cold." "You were incredible," Gregory said, swallowing the lump forming in his throat. "A brave and strong big sister. Bernard is lucky to have you." The words seemed insufficient, given the trauma his daughter had suffered. Gregory realized that much more than promises would be needed to rebuild the broken trust. "We're going to do things differently from now on," he said, holding Sophia's small hand in his. "I'll work less, be home more. We'll be a real family. Promise?" Sophia's eyes, so much like her mother's, shone with cautious hope. "I promise," Gregory replied, knowing he would have to reorganize his entire life to keep that promise. "And you know what else? Today I have a special surprise." The girl's face brightened slightly. "What surprise?" "Today we're going to have breakfast in bed watching cartoons, and then, if you're feeling better, we can have a picnic right here in the room." It was a simple proposal, but the smile that bloomed on Sophia's face was worth more than any business deal Gregory had ever closed in his life. In the following hours, as the sun gained strength outside, the atmosphere inside the mansion began to subtly change. Gregory cancelled all his meetings for the week, to the shock of his secretary, who had never seen him prioritize personal matters. He called the best doctors in Los Angeles to monitor Bernard's recovery, and most importantly, he remained present, truly present with his children. By evening, Bernard seemed better. His fever had subsided, although the cough persisted. Sophia, recovering from the physical and emotional shock, even managed a few laughs when her father clumsily tried to change the baby's diaper. "Not like that, Dad," she said, skillfully grabbing the ointment jar. "First you have to clean well, then apply the ointment, then put on the diaper." "See?" Gregory watched admiringly his 8-year-old daughter's dexterity. "Where did you learn to do that so well?" Sophia's smile wavered. "I had to learn." She didn't like taking care of Bernard. The indirect mention of Deborah brought back the shadow of the recent past. Gregory realized they would need to face these ghosts together, not avoid them. Sophia, we need to talk about what happened. Not just yesterday, but since she arrived. The girl visibly stiffened. I don't want to talk about it. I know it's difficult, but sometimes talking helps heal wounds we can't see, Gregory explained, carefully choosing his words. You don't have to tell me everything at once. We can start slowly. Sophia was silent for a long moment, playing with the hem of her pajamas. She said things, she finally said, so softly that Gregory had to lean in to hear. What things, dear? That we were a burden to you. That you only let us stay here because you had to. That Mom left because she couldn't stand me anymore. Gregory felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. The calculated cruelty of those words, intended to break a child's spirit, was almost incomprehensible. Sophia, look at me, he asked, waiting until his daughter's eyes met his. None of that is true. Not a single word. You and Bernard are the best part of my life. And your mother. She loved you more than anything in the world. If she could, she would never have left. Then why did you leave us with her? Why were you never here? The questions spilled out in a rush, as if Sophia had kept them inside for a long time. Gregory had no easy answers. After your mother passed, I immersed myself in work. I thought that if I ensured you had everything, the best school, the best home, the best opportunities, I would be fulfilling my role. It was a terrible mistake. I confused things with presents, money with love. The silence that followed was interrupted only by the sound of Bernard playing with a rattle. Do you know what your mother told me before Bernard was born? Gregory continued, feeling it was time to share this. She said, no matter how busy you are, never let our children doubt that they are loved. And I failed at that. But I promise, Sophia, that from now on you two will always be my priority. A tear rolled down the girl's face, and she quickly wiped it away with the back of her hand. I missed Mom so much. And you too, even when you were home. Gregory hugged his daughter, feeling her small body tremble with suppressed sobs. I know, my love. I know. But I'm here now. Truly here. And I'm not going anywhere. That night, for the first time in a long time, Gregory prepared dinner with Sophia's help. It wasn't elaborate, just sandwiches and packet soup, but the process of doing something together brought a joy that no gourmet meal could surpass. After dinner, while Sophia bathed Bernard, insisting she could help, Gregory received a call that reminded him of the outside world. It was his lawyer, Richard Miller. Gregory, I received your message. I want you to know I'm already taking care of everything. The divorce petition will be filed tomorrow with evidence of child abuse. Thank you, Richard. I want this resolved as quickly as possible. There's a complication, the lawyer continued. Deborah is alleging that you physically assaulted her last night, and that's why she left the house. She's threatening to file a formal complaint. Gregory felt his blood boil. That's completely false. I have security footage of everything that happened yesterday. I imagined you'd say that. Don't worry, we'll resolve it. But be prepared, she won't give up easily. After hanging up, Gregory noticed Sophia standing in the office doorway, with Bernard wrapped in a towel in her arms. Is she coming back? The girl asked, fear evident in her voice. No, Sophia, she's trying to cause trouble, but she won't succeed. I have proof of everything she did. The cameras, Sophia said, surprising her father. I knew they existed. I saw you installing one once, but I didn't tell anyone. Gregory smiled, impressed by his daughter's perception. That's right. The cameras will protect us. Now shall we put this little guy to sleep? As he placed Bernard in the crib, Gregory noticed how much calmer the baby seemed. His breathing was still a little difficult due to the bronchitis, but the expression of fear he carried near Deborah had disappeared. Sophia insisted on sleeping in her brother's room that night. To take care of him if he coughs too much, she explained, with the seriousness of an experienced nurse. Gregory brought a mattress for the floor next to the crib, preparing it with sheets and pillows. Then he sat down to read a story to them both. It was an old book, one of Sophia's favorites that hadn't been opened in months. Dad, Sophia called when the story ended and the lights were turned off, leaving only the bedside lamp on. Can I ask you something? Of course, anything. Rex's doghouse, can we dismantle it? I don't want to see it in the garden anymore. The doghouse, now a symbol of trauma. Gregory nodded immediately. Tomorrow. In fact, I have a better idea. Let's transform that corner of the garden into something new, something beautiful. What do you think? A flower garden, Sophia suggested. her eyes shining with the possibility. Mum loved white flowers. A white flower garden it will be then. We can plant jasmine, daisies, white roses, and lilies, Sophia completed. They were her favorites. Lilies, for sure, Gregory agreed, feeling a connection with Camilla he hadn't experienced in a long time. It will be our special project. Sophia smiled, a small but genuine smile, the first in a long time. Good night, Dad. Good night, my brave one, he replied, kissing her forehead. Sleep well, tomorrow will be a new day. As he silently left the room, Gregory felt a certainty growing within him. The path would be long and difficult, but they would overcome it together. The storm had passed, and now it was time to rebuild, not just the broken trust, but also the family that had almost been lost in the shadows of the Alistair mansion. Outside the window, the full moon illuminated the garden, including the old doghouse that, soon, would give way to flowers symbolizing a new beginning. The night was clear now, with no trace of the previous day's storm. Only calm silence and the promise of a different dawn. The Miller & Associates law firm was located on the 20th floor of a skyscraper on Fifth Avenue in New York City. From its wide windows, the chaotic grandeur of the metropolis was visible. Gregory watched the city's movement as he awaited Richard Miller, his lawyer and longtime friend. "Sorry for the delay," Richard said, entering the room with a thick folder under his arm. In his early 50s, with graying temples and thin-rimmed glasses, he exuded the confidence of someone who had won hundreds of legal battles. "I was at the courthouse reviewing the initial divorce petition." Gregory averted his gaze from the window. "Any problems?" Richard sat behind the mahogany desk and opened the folder. "Several, actually. Deborah isn't making things easy. In addition to the false accusation of assault, she's claiming half of your assets, including company shares. That's absurd. We have a prenuptial agreement, which she is contesting, claiming she was coerced into signing it." Richard adjusted his glasses. "But that's not the worst of it. I've received information that she's hired Teresa Fox." Gregory felt a chill run down his spine. Teresa Fox was known in legal circles as the Shark, a ruthless lawyer who specialized in high-profile divorces, famous for destroying reputations and securing multi-million-dollar settlements for her clients. "This is more serious than we imagined," Richard continued. "Fox doesn't fight fair. Prepare for personal attacks, media exposure, the whole package." Gregory ran a hand over his face, feeling the exhaustion of the past few days. "I don't care about the money or my reputation. I just want to protect my children." "I understand, but her strategy will likely be to use the children as leverage." Richard shuffled through documents. "She's already building a narrative that you're an absent father, that Sophia has behavioral problems due to your negligence, and that Deborah was the only stable figure in the house. That's completely false. We know that, but a good lawyer can distort reality. We need to be prepared." Gregory stood up and returned to the window. Down below, life continued at its frantic pace. Executives rushing to meetings, tourists admiring the avenue, teenagers leaving the subway, a world oblivious to his personal drama. "What are our options?" Richard organized some papers on the desk. "Option 1, we play hardball too. We use the recordings, employee testimonies, your children's medical records. We go public with the case if necessary. We show who Deborah really is." And option 2, we offer a generous financial settlement in exchange for her leaving your lives forever. No visitation rights, no contact, a clean break. Gregory considered the alternatives. The idea of dragging his children through a long and possibly traumatic process was unbearable. On the other hand, giving in to Deborah's blackmail seemed morally wrong. And who would guarantee she wouldn't return in the future, asking for more? "I need to think," he finally said. "Any decision I make will directly affect Sophia and Bernard." "Understandable," Richard replied. "But don't take too long. Fox is already making her moves." As he left the office, Gregory received a notification on his phone. It was an article from the Social Scroll blog, known for gossip about the Los Angeles elite. The title made his stomach sink. "Crisis in the Alistair Empire. Businessman accused of expelling wife during storm." The text was clearly biased, painting Deborah as a victim and insinuating that Gregory had had a fit of rage, expelling her from the house in the middle of a rainy night. The article mentioned sources close, who reported a history of controlling and explosive behavior from the businessman. With hands trembling with anger, Gregory called his press advisor. "I've already seen the article," Felicity said before he even spoke. "We're monitoring other outlets." For now it's restricted to gossip blogs, but it shouldn't take long to hit traditional media. I want an official denial. I don't think that's prudent, she replied. Responding gives legitimacy to the story. Better to wait for developments before we comment. Gregory reluctantly agreed and ended the call. As he got into the car, he instructed the driver to take him home. He needed to be with his children, especially now that the media storm was beginning to brew. At the mansion, he found Sophia and Bernard in the garden, accompanied by Mrs. Eleanor. The three watched two gardeners removing the old doghouse. "Daddy!" Sophia exclaimed when she saw him running towards him. "Look, they've started already. Soon we'll be able to plant our flowers." Gregory hugged his daughter, feeling a momentary relief at seeing her enthusiasm. "Yes, Princess. Soon this place will be the most beautiful in the garden." He took Bernard from Mrs. Eleanor's arms, noticing that the baby seemed more alert today, although he still coughed occasionally. "How is he?" "Improving," the housekeeper replied. "The medicine is working. The pediatrician called earlier and said we won't need to go to the hospital if he continues like this." "Great." Gregory breathed a sigh of relief. "Sophia, how about we have lunch in the garden today? Like a small picnic?" "Yes." The girl jumped excitedly. "Can I help make the sandwiches?" "Of course you can. You're my official assistant chef now." As they walked to the house, Gregory's phone vibrated again. It was Richard. "We have a problem," the lawyer said without preamble. "Deborah has filed a temporary restraining order. She's requesting temporary custody of the children, claiming you pose a risk to them due to unstable and aggressive behavior." Gregory stopped in his tracks, feeling as if the world was spinning around him. "She can't do that. I have the recordings. I can prove she's the one who poses a risk. The judge has scheduled a preliminary hearing for tomorrow. I want you to bring all the recordings. And we need testimonies. From the housekeeper, the doctor who treated the children, anyone who can confirm your version." "Richard, I can't lose my children." Gregory's voice faltered, drawing Sophia's worried gaze. "You won't lose them," the lawyer assured. "Trust me. But we need to be prepared for a nasty battle." After hanging up, Gregory forced a smile to reassure Sophia. "It was just work, dear, nothing important. Let's prepare our picnic." In the kitchen, while Sophia carefully cut tomatoes, with a plastic knife under careful supervision, Gregory called Mrs. Eleanor aside. "Deborah is trying to get custody of the children," he informed in a low voice. "I need your testimony about what has happened here in recent months." The housekeeper's wrinkled face paled. "My goodness, that woman has no limits." Then, straightening her shoulders, she added, "You can count on me, sir. I'll tell everything I saw. She won't take those children, not while I have the strength to speak." Lunch in the garden was a moment of truce. Sophia laughed genuinely as she tried to get Bernard to eat small pieces of fruit. The baby, in turn, seemed enchanted by the butterflies visiting the nearby flowers. For a few hours, Gregory managed to put aside his worries and simply be present. It was Sophia who noticed the car first. "Someone's at the gate," she said, pointing to the property entrance. Gregory turned and saw a black car stopped. A man was taking pictures with a long-range camera. "Stay here with Bernard," he instructed, quickly standing up. "Eleanor, please take the children inside." As the housekeeper hurried to gather the little ones, Gregory walked towards the gate. The man, seeing him approach, quickly got into the car and drove away. "Who was that, Dad?" Sophia asked when he returned to the house. "No one important, dear. Probably someone lost." But he knew it wasn't true. The paparazzi had found his address, which meant the story was gaining traction. Soon, his private life would be plastered across all news portals. That afternoon, while Sophia watched cartoons with Bernard, Gregory met with his legal and public relations team in the mansion's library. The situation was serious. In addition to Deborah's restraining order, new witnesses had emerged corroborating her version. "A former nanny is saying you rarely saw the children, that you left everything in the hands of staff," Felicity informed. "And there are rumors that Deborah will give an exclusive interview tomorrow, detailing alleged abuses she suffered during the marriage. This is an orchestrated campaign," Richard concluded. "They're trying to destroy your credibility before the hearing." Gregory ran a hand through his hair, desperate. "What do we do?" "We have our own weapons," Richard replied, determined. "The camera recordings are irrefutable, and I got Dr. Richard's testimony, confirming the children's condition that night. Still, we need a media strategy," Felicity added. "We suggest a press conference where you present your side of the story in a controlled manner. We can do it right here tomorrow morning before the hearing." Gregory agreed. although the idea of exposing his private life repulsed him. For his children, he would do what was necessary. After the meeting, as everyone left, Richard stayed behind. "There's something else you should know," he said in a confidential tone. "We did an investigation into Deborah's past. We discovered she was previously accused of fraud in one of her former jobs. Nothing went to trial, but there are records. And more, this is her third marriage, not her second, as she claimed. What does that mean for us? It means she has a history of lies and manipulation that we can use to our advantage." Richard placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "We're going to win this, Gregory. But we need to play as hard as she does." When Richard left, Gregory remained alone in the library, absorbing everything that had happened. He felt exhausted, physically and emotionally. He was about to go check on the children when he heard light footsteps in the hallway. "Dad." It was Sophia standing in the doorway with a worried face. "Is everything okay? I heard voices." He smiled, trying to dispel her concern. "I was just sorting out some work matters, nothing to worry about." Sophia entered the library and sat in the armchair next to his. "Dad, I heard some things about her trying to take us." Gregory's heart tightened. His daughter was too perceptive for her own good. "Sophia, she won't succeed, will she?" The girl's voice trembled slightly. "We won't have to go with her." Gregory knelt in front of his daughter, holding her small hands in his. "Never. Listen carefully. I will never let her take you. I will do everything necessary to keep our family together." Sophia nodded, seemingly relieved for a moment. "Can I sleep in your room tonight?" "I promise not to make noise." "Of course you can, and Bernard too. We can have a slumber party, just the three of us." A small smile lit up the girl's face. "Like in the movies?" "Exactly like in the movies, with popcorn and everything." That night, with Sophia asleep on one side and Bernard on the other, Gregory remained awake watching his children. The idea that someone was trying to snatch them from him was unbearable. He needed to be strong, stronger than he had ever been, not for his businesses or his reputation, but for these two lives that depended on him. Outside, the first photographers began to gather at the mansion gates, drawn by the unfolding scandal. And somewhere in the city, Deborah and her team planned their next move, preparing for the battle that would divide Los Angeles high society and threaten to tear apart what remained of the Allister family. The night advanced, silent and tense, like the calm before the storm. Tomorrow would be the decisive day. Tomorrow, Gregory would face not only his ex-wife, but his own mistakes and negligences that had allowed this situation to reach such a critical point. Gently kissing each child's forehead, he made a silent promise. "I will fix this. For you, I will fix everything." The morning arrived with a grey sky over Los Angeles, as if nature itself recognized the gravity of the day beginning. Gregory woke before his alarm, finding Sophia still asleep, an arm protectively stretched over her brother. The image of his children, so vulnerable and trusting in their sleep, reinforced his determination. He rose silently and went to the window. As he expected, the media had multiplied overnight. A small crowd of reporters and photographers gathered at the main gate, some even trying to scale the walls for better angles. His phone vibrated. It was Felicity, his press advisor. "Good morning. I'm seeing the situation there," she said, probably watching live footage of the mansion on a news channel. "I managed to schedule the press conference for 10 a.m. We secured the auditorium at the Plaza Hotel, neutral, professional, controlled." "Perfect," Gregory replied, keeping his voice low so as not to wake the children. "And how's the coverage?" "Honestly, it's not good." Deborah gave an exclusive interview to Good Morning America. She cried, showed alleged bruises, said she feared for her life. "They're calling it the dark side of the Allister Empire." Gregory closed his eyes, feeling a wave of nausea. "She's going too far. That's why we need to act fast. Your court hearing is at 2 p.m. We have the conference to present your side before that. Richard is preparing the edited videos from the security cameras, just enough to expose her lies without overexposing the children." Upon hanging up, Gregory returned to the bed, where Sophia was beginning to stir. Her sleepy eyes met her father's. "Good morning, Princess," he said, forcing a smile. "Did you sleep well?" Sophia nodded, yawning. "Bernard didn't cough as much last night." "That's great." Gregory sat on the edge of the bed. "Sophia, I need to talk to you about today." The girl immediately became alert, like a small animal sensing danger. "Is it about her?" "Yes, partly," Gregory replied, searching for the right words. Today I'll have to go out to resolve some problems. There will be an important meeting where I'll tell the truth about what happened here. Will I have to go too? Will I have to see her? The fear was palpable in the child's voice. No, dear. You and Bernard will stay here with Mrs. Eleanor. But there are many people outside, journalists and photographers. They want to take pictures and ask questions. So you'll stay inside today, okay? No going to the garden. Sophia absorbed the information with a maturity that broke Gregory's heart. Because she's telling lies about you, isn't she? How do you know that? I heard Mrs. Eleanor talking on the phone. Sophia hugged her knees. She always lied, Dad. She said she was good when you were looking, but when you turned your back. I know, my love. And that's why today I'm going to tell everyone the truth. Gregory adjusted a lock of her hair. But I want you to know one thing. No matter what happens, no matter what you see on television or hear people say, I love you and Bernard more than anything, and I will always protect you. The look in Sophia's eyes, a mixture of trust and fear, almost broke Gregory's resolve. But he knew he had to be strong. Today would be the day he faced not only Deborah, but his own mistakes as a father. 2 hours later, after a tense breakfast and detailed instructions for Mrs. Eleanor regarding security, Gregory prepared to leave. The driver would wait at the back of the property, away from the press. Before leaving, he knelt before Sophia. Take care of your brother for a few hours. I'll be as quick as possible. The girl nodded solemnly, like a soldier receiving a mission. I'll protect him, Dad. You can trust me. I know I can. Gregory hugged her tightly, inhaling the scent of baby shampoo in her hair. You're the bravest girl I know, just like your mother. The auditorium at the Plaza Hotel was packed. Journalists from all major outlets occupied every seat, cameras strategically positioned. On the sides, security teams ensured no one crossed the established boundaries. Gregory waited in an adjacent room, along with Richard and Felicity. His statement was prepared, the videos selected, everything timed to create the necessary impact without dragging on too long. Remember, Felicity instructed, adjusting his tie, stay calm and focused. No excessive displays of emotion, but also don't appear cold. Be honest about your mistakes as a father. That humanizes you. And when we show the videos, let them speak for themselves. What if they ask about Deborah's previous relationships? Gregory questioned. About the fraud accusations? Just mention that there's a troubling history that will be presented to the competent authorities, Richard replied. We don't want to seem vindictive or defamatory. An assistant knocked on the door, signaling it was time. Gregory took a deep breath, adjusted his impeccable suit and walked onto the stage, where a simple lectern awaited him. The flashes began immediately, momentarily blinding him. Good morning, everyone, he began, his voice amplified by the microphones. Thank you for being here on this difficult morning. I am here not just as a businessman, but primarily as a father. A father who made mistakes, who was absent when he should have been present, and who is now fighting to protect his children. The cameras hummed, recording every word, every expression. In recent days, serious accusations have been made against me. Accusations that distort reality and threaten the well-being of the two most important people in my life, my children, Sophia and Bernard. I am here to clarify the facts. Gregory then narrated in clear and direct terms how he met Deborah, how the relationship quickly evolved after the loss of his wife, and how in his grief and search for stability for the children, he failed to notice the warning signs. My mistake was believing that I could replace presence with material comfort, that a new wife would fill the void left by their mother. It was a failure of judgment for which I will pay for the rest of my life. Then came the decisive moment. The lights dimmed, and a screen descended behind him. What you will see now are images captured by the security cameras of my residence. We warn that some scenes may be disturbing. The video began to play. It showed Deborah yelling at Sophia for spilling a glass, dragging her by the arm with enough force to leave marks. Then, the scene of the doghouse. The children being pushed inside, the door being locked, the rain falling relentlessly as Deborah returned to the house. A murmur ran through the auditorium. Some journalists exchanged shocked glances. Others took notes furiously. These are just some of the situations my children faced in recent months, Gregory continued when the lights came back on. Situations that, with deep shame, I admit I didn't realize in time. When I finally discovered what was happening, I took immediate action to protect Sophia and Bernard. Questions cascaded. Journalists stood up, shouting for attention. Felicity, in her role as moderator, selected who would speak. "Mr. Alistair, why didn't you report these abuses to the police?" asked a reporter from the New York Times. "My priority was, and continues to be, the emotional well-being of my children. They have already gone through enough trauma. The exposure of a criminal process would be another layer of suffering. I chose to resolve the situation through appropriate legal channels with a focus on their protection." "How do you explain the marks Ms. Morrison showed this morning? She alleges you physically assaulted her," questioned a CBS News journalist. "I categorically deny these accusations. The security cameras record all areas of the house. There was no physical aggression on my part. As for the marks presented, I will let the authorities investigate their origin and veracity." The press conference continued for another 40 minutes, with Gregory maintaining his composure despite the increasingly incisive questions. At the end, he made a final statement. "I am not here seeking sympathy or trying to demonize anyone. I am here as a father trying to protect his children. An imperfect father who is belatedly learning what truly matters in life. All I ask is that the truth prevail, for the sake of two innocent children who do not deserve to be pawns in a game of ambition and lies." When he left the stage, Gregory felt emotionally drained. Felicity met him backstage with an approving look. "You were excellent. Honest, direct, focused on the children. Initial reactions on social media are already leaning in your favor." "I don't care what they think of me," he replied, loosening his tie. "I just want this to end so we can move on." Richard, who was monitoring the repercussions on his tablet, gestured to get attention. "We have news. Dr. Fox's office just called. They want a private meeting before the hearing." "Is that good or bad?" Gregory asked. "It's interesting," the lawyer replied with a slight smile. "Usually when the opposing party requests a meeting after a public demonstration of evidence, it's because they're reconsidering their strategy." The meeting was scheduled for 12:30 p.m. at the same hotel. Gregory used the interim to speak with Sophia by phone, assuring her that everything was going well and that he would be home soon. His daughter's voice sounded anxious, but she assured him that Bernard was calm, playing with his colorful blocks under Mrs. Eleanor's watchful eye. The meeting took place in a private conference room. On one side of the table, Gregory and Richard. On the other, Deborah and the formidable Teresa Fox, a woman in her 60s with perfectly coiffed grey hair and shrewd eyes behind elegant glasses. Deborah looked different, without the theatrical makeup of the morning interview, without the rehearsed tears. Her gaze was cold and calculating, assessing the battlefield. "Mr. Alistair." "Doctor," Fox began, "thank you for agreeing to this meeting. After watching your press conference, we believe we can reach an agreement that benefits all parties. My only interest is the well-being of my children," Gregory replied, keeping his gaze fixed on the lawyer, refusing to look at Deborah. "Naturally," Fox continued, "and that's why we're here. My client is willing to withdraw the assault accusations and drop the custody request in exchange for an adequate financial settlement." "Adequate according to what parameters?" Richard asked, already anticipating where the conversation was going. Fox mentioned a sum that made even Gregory, accustomed to multi-million-dollar deals, raise his eyebrows. "That's extortion," Richard calmly observed. "That's compensation," Fox corrected, "for the damage to my client's reputation, for the emotional trauma caused by public exposure, and for the investments she made in the family life that is now being destroyed." Gregory leaned forward, finally looking directly at Deborah. "What investments would those be? The time you spent terrorizing my children? The energy you spent manipulating everyone?" Deborah held his gaze, a cold smile playing on her lips. "You don't understand, do you, Gregory? I could have been a great wife, a great stepmother, if you had given me the respect and position I deserved, but you never got over Camilla. Those children were more important to you than me, even when you barely saw them. And that would justify locking them in a doghouse during a storm?" Gregory's voice trembled slightly with contained fury. A moment of frustration. Everyone has their limits. Deborah shrugged as if discussing a trivial incident. Besides, the girl was impossible. Always challenging me, always trying to prove I wasn't welcome. I was just trying to establish some discipline. The coldness with which she spoke about Sophia's suffering made Gregory's stomach churn. In that moment, he clearly saw who Deborah truly was. Not a passionate woman who had lost control, but a calculating predator who saw in him and his family an opportunity for social and financial ascent. "The offer is on the table," Dr. Fox intervened, realizing the situation could get out of control. I advise you to accept it, Mr. Alistair. Otherwise we will go to court, and my client has more cards up her sleeve that have not yet been revealed. Gregory looked at Richard, who made a small gesture indicating they needed to talk privately. The two left the room, leaving Deborah and her lawyer waiting. What do you think? Gregory asked as soon as the door closed behind them. She's bluffing, Richard replied. The evidence we have is too solid. Any judge with an ounce of common sense will see the truth, but a lawsuit will be long and exhausting. Continuous media exposure, the possibility of the children eventually having to testify. Is that what you want? Gregory pondered, feeling the weight of the decision. Paying Deborah seemed morally wrong. It would be like rewarding her cruelty. On the other hand, prolonging the conflict would mean more suffering for Sophia and Bernard. Let's counter-propose, he finally decided, a significantly lower amount, with the additional condition of a strict confidentiality agreement and the guarantee that she will never again attempt contact with the children. Richard nodded, satisfied. A sensible approach. Upon returning to the room, they presented the counter-proposal. As expected, Deborah protested vehemently, but Dr. Fox, more pragmatic, seemed to assess the real chances of victory in court. We need time to consider, the lawyer finally said. You have until the start of the hearing, Richard replied. At 2 p.m. we will be in court, unless we reach an agreement before then. As Gregory and Richard left the hotel through the back, avoiding the press still waiting, Gregory's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly, he answered. Mr. Alistair? The female voice on the other end sounded anxious. This is Clara Morrison, Deborah's cousin. I need to speak to you urgently before the hearing. I have information that could help you and your children. Gregory looked at Richard, covering the phone's microphone with his hand. It's a cousin of Deborah's. Says she has important information. The lawyer frowned, cautious. It could be a trap. Mr. Alistair, please, the voice on the phone insisted. I know it sounds strange, but I need you to listen to me. I'm not on her side. Gregory hesitated for only a second. Where can we meet? I'm at the Grand Reading Room Cafe at Rockefeller Center. I can wait here. I'm wearing a blue dress and red-framed glasses. After hanging up, Gregory faced the lawyer. I'm going to meet her. The hearing is only an hour and a half away. I won't be able to convince you otherwise, will I? Richard sighed. At least let me come along. I'll stay a few tables away, observing. The Grand Reading Room Cafe at the iconic Rockefeller Center on Fifth Avenue was moderately busy at that lunch hour. Executives browsed books while eating quick sandwiches. Students occupied tables with open laptops. Tourists photographed the unique architecture of the space. Gregory spotted the woman immediately. Clara Morrison appeared to be around 35, with brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, the simple blue dress contrasting with her striking glasses. There was something in her face that vaguely resembled Deborah, but her expression was completely different. Open, anxious, without her cousin's calculated coldness. Mr. Alistair. She stood up as soon as she saw him approach. Thank you for coming. I know you must be suspicious. Let's just say I have good reasons to be cautious, he replied, sitting at the table. Richard discreetly settled a few tables away, pretending to read a newspaper. Clara took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. I watched your press conference today, the images, the children in the rain. I couldn't stay quiet after that. Did you know about Deborah's behavior with my children? Not directly, no. We haven't been close for years. She nervously fiddled with her purse strap. But I've known Deborah since childhood. And, well, let's just say what I saw in the videos didn't surprise me. Why? Clara looked around, as if afraid of being overheard, before continuing. Deborah always had this side, since she was little, but our family preferred to ignore it, pretend it was just a strong personality. When we were teenagers, she... Clara paused, hesitant. Please continue, Gregory encouraged. Any information could be crucial to protecting my children. When we were 16, Deborah babysat our aunt's children for a weekend. The older boy, 7 years old, was hyperactive. After disobeying one of her orders, he was found locked in the dark basement, terrified. Deborah claimed he had hidden in a game and ended up accidentally trapped. Everyone believed her. Everyone except me, who had heard her threaten him earlier. Gregory felt a shiver. The story was eerily similar to the Doghouse incident. Why didn't you say anything at the time? I was afraid of her, always have been. Clara lowered her eyes. Deborah has this power over people. She can make you doubt what you saw, what you know, and if you confront her, she retaliates, Gregory completed, remembering the veiled threats Deborah had made during their marriage. Exactly. Years later, when I questioned some of her manipulations, she spread rumors that almost destroyed my engagement. Clara took a sip of water before continuing. But that's not all I came to tell you. I came because I know things about her past that might be relevant to your case. What kind of things? Your lawyer probably already found out about the fraud accusation in her old job. But I doubt he knows about her first husband. Gregory leaned forward, intrigued. Richard mentioned this would be her third marriage, not her second, as she claimed. Yes, but it's not just a matter of numbers. Her first marriage lasted only 6 months. He was a businessman from Denver, Colorado, older, very wealthy. It ended when he suffered a domestic accident. He fell down the stairs of his mansion. He was in a coma for weeks. Are you suggesting that— I'm not suggesting anything, Clara quickly interrupted. Officially, it was an accident, but I know there was an investigation that didn't go anywhere due to lack of evidence. What I know for sure is that after the divorce, she walked away with a multi-million-dollar settlement, despite the very short marriage. Gregory felt his stomach churn. How far would Deborah's ambition go? What was she capable of doing? There's one more thing, Clara continued, opening her purse. The main reason I decided to seek you out. She pulled out a thin folder and slid it across the table. These are copies of Deborah's medical records. I got them through a friend who works at the clinic where she consults. Gregory looked at the folder, hesitant. Isn't this confidential? I could get into legal trouble if I use this. Technically, yes. But I think your lawyer can find legitimate ways to obtain this information now that he knows it exists. The important thing is the content. He opened the folder and began to read the documents. His face gradually lost its color. She has a diagnosis of, he began, incredulous, personality disorder. Diagnosed 3 years ago after her second husband insisted on a psychiatric evaluation as part of their divorce process. She had a few therapy sessions, took medication for a while, but abandoned treatment. Clara adjusted her glasses nervously. Her condition explains much of the behavior you witnessed. The ability to manipulate, the superficial charm, the lack of empathy, the outbursts of rage. Gregory closed the folder, his mind processing what he had just discovered. Suddenly, many things made sense. Deborah's abrupt changes in behavior, her ability to charm in public while being cruel in private, the coldness with which she treated the children when no one was looking. Why are you telling me this? Why risk yourself? He asked, studying Clara's face. Because I saw those children in the doghouse in the rain. Her voice faltered. Because I have a young son, and I can't imagine anyone doing that to him. And because— she hesitated. Because I feel guilty for all the other times I kept quiet. Gregory's phone vibrated. It was a message from Richard. Fox called. They accepted our counter-proposal with minor modifications. They want to close the deal before the hearing. Gregory looked at Clara, a new determination in his eyes. Thank you for this. Truly thank you. I think you just changed the course of this story. I just hope those children are okay, she replied, standing up. And be careful, Mr. Alistair. Deborah doesn't give up easily on what she wants. And what do you think she really wants? The same as always, money, status, power, but above all, to win. For her, this is a game, and losing is not an option. After Clara left, Richard joined Gregory. What did she tell you? He asked, observing the folder on the table. Something that changes everything. Gregory handed the documents to the lawyer. Read this on the way to the courthouse. I think our strategy for the agreement needs to be revised. At the courthouse, the atmosphere was tense. Journalists crowded the entrance, trying to capture any detail of the case that already dominated headlines as the Alistair battle. However, to the media's surprise, both parties and their lawyers headed to a private room before the hearing even began. Deborah was already there when Gregory and Richard entered. Beside her, Dr. Fox maintained a professional expression, but there was a slight uneasiness in her gaze that did not go unnoticed. Let's finalize this agreement, Fox began without preamble. We have reviewed the counter-proposal and, with a few adjustments, we believe we can reach a satisfactory term for all. Richard placed his folder on the table but did not open it immediately. Before we proceed, there has been a new development that significantly alters our position. Deborah narrowed her eyes, suspicious. What kind of development? We have received information about your medical history, Miss Alistair, specifically about a psychiatric diagnosis from 3 years ago that you omitted during the marriage. Deborah's face transformed, going from suspicion to fury in a matter of seconds. That's ridiculous and irrelevant. On the contrary, Gregory calmly interjected, It is extremely relevant when it comes to the safety of my children. An untreated diagnosis of personality disorder with a documented history of manipulative and aggressive behavior is something any judge would consider crucial in a custody case. Teresa Fox remained impassive, but her gaze now assessed Deborah from a new perspective. As a good lawyer, she probably wondered why her client had not shared this vital information. Even if such a diagnosis existed, Fox said cautiously, there would be issues of medical confidentiality to be considered. That's true, Richard agreed. That's why we are not informally presenting these documents. Only informing you that if this case goes to trial, we will officially request the court to subpoena the relevant medical records for the children's safety. Deborah leaned in to whisper something in her lawyer's ear. The whispered conversation gradually became more tense, with Deborah clearly insisting on something and Fox refusing with small shakes of her head. Finally, Fox turned to Gregory and Richard. "We would like a moment alone, please." The two men left for the corridor, leaving the two women in the room. Through the closed door, they could hear Deborah's agitated tone, though the words were indistinguishable. "Do you think she'll give in?" Gregory asked. "Teresa Fox is a shark, but she's also smart. She knows when a case is lost. The question is whether she can convince her client." 10 minutes later, the door opened. Fox looked exhausted, as if she had just fought a difficult battle. Deborah, sitting at the back of the room, kept her arms crossed and a closed expression. "We are willing to reconsider the terms," Fox announced. "In exchange for your discretion on certain medical matters, my client will accept a considerably lower amount and waive any future claim to custody or visitation." Gregory and Richard exchanged glances. It was more than they had hoped to achieve. "We will need to include strict mutual confidentiality clauses," the lawyer continued, "and a provision prohibiting any future contact between Ms. Morrison and the children." "Morrison?" Gregory questioned. "She will revert to her maiden name after the divorce," Fox clarified. The agreement was finalized in the next 2 hours, with the lawyers working on the details, while Gregory and Deborah remained on opposite sides of the room, avoiding any eye contact. When everything was ready for signatures, Gregory finally looked directly at the woman he had married. He searched her eyes for any sign of remorse, any indication that she understood the suffering she had caused. He found nothing but cold, calculating rage. "I hope you use some of the money to resume your treatment," he said in a low voice, as the lawyers prepared the final documents. Deborah smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Always the concerned hero, aren't you, Gregory? So superior, so righteous." Her voice was almost a whisper, so only he could hear. "But deep down, you know you're as guilty as I am. Who left those children with me? Who was too busy with his hotels to notice what was happening under his own roof?" The words hit Gregory like a punch to the stomach, not because they were cruel, but because they contained a truth he struggled to accept. "You're right," he admitted, surprising her. "I failed them, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. The difference is that I want to improve, to be better for them." For an instant, so brief that Gregory would later wonder if he had imagined it, something akin to confusion crossed Deborah's face, as if his sincerity was a language she couldn't fully comprehend. The moment quickly passed. Fox approached with the documents, and Deborah's mask of coldness settled back into place. "Sign here, here, and here," Richard instructed, pointing to the marked spots on the documents. "With that, the agreement is sealed. The divorce will be finalized in a few weeks, but the provisions regarding the children take effect immediately." When Gregory signed the last page, he felt an immense weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't a perfect ending. Deborah would still walk away with a considerable amount of money, but his children were safe, and that was all that mattered. "One last detail," Richard said, handing an envelope to Deborah. "This is a separate document, acknowledging that you understand and accept the restraining order. You cannot approach within 500 yards of the children or their residence. Any violation will result in the forfeiture of all financial benefits of the agreement and potential legal consequences." The look Deborah shot Gregory as she signed the document was loaded with resentment, but there was something else there too, a calculated acceptance, as if she was already planning her next move, her next identity, her next victim. Outside the courthouse, the media eagerly awaited details. Felicity, the press advisor, had already prepared a simple statement. "The parties have reached an amicable and confidential agreement. The Alistair family now requests privacy during this time of recovery and rebuilding." Inside the car on the way home, Gregory finally allowed himself to breathe. The nightmare was over. Or at least this part of it. He knew the real work. Rebuilding his children's trust, healing emotional wounds, creating a new normal, was just beginning. "We achieved a great result," Richard commented, sitting beside him. "Given the circumstances, we couldn't have hoped for anything better." "Yes," Gregory agreed, looking out the window as the car sped through the city towards Beverly Hills. "But I can't stop thinking about what Clara said, about Deborah not giving up on what she wants." "The restraining order is very clear," Richard assured, "and the terms of the agreement are strict. If she tries anything, she'll lose everything." "It's not the money I'm worried about," Gregory confessed. "It's what Clara called winning. For Deborah, it was never really about money. It was about control, about having power over me, over the children." Richard nodded gravely. "I understand your concern, but legally we've done everything we could. The rest, well, we'll have to remain vigilant." Upon arriving at the mansion, Gregory noticed that most of the reporters had dispersed, probably following Deborah or heading to the press conference Felicity would organize later. Before the car even stopped completely, the front door opened and Sophia ran out, followed by Mrs. Eleanor carrying Bernard. The girl's face was anxious, searching for answers in her father's expression. Gregory got out of the vehicle and opened his arms. Sophia ran to him, almost knocking him over with the impact. "She's not coming back?" "Never again," Sophia asked, her voice muffled against her father's shirt. "Never again," Gregory assured her, holding her tightly in his arms. "She signed a paper promising to stay away from us forever." Over Sophia's shoulder, he saw Mrs. Eleanor approach with Bernard, who stretched his little arms towards his father. Gregory took his son with his free arm, keeping Sophia safe with the other. "Let's go inside," he said, leading the small family back into the house. "We have a lot to talk about. And then, if you want, we can start planning our white flower garden." Sophia smiled, a genuine smile that illuminated her face, as Gregory hadn't seen in months. "Can I choose where to plant the lilies?" "Of course you can. You can choose everything." As they ascended the entrance steps, Gregory looked back one last time at the street now almost empty of reporters. A strange feeling washed over him, as if he was being watched, but there was no one there, just the wind rustling the garden trees. Shaking off the unsettling feeling, he entered the house and firmly closed the door behind him, leaving the outside world behind. Today was a day of new beginnings, of healing. The shadows of the past would have to wait, but as he hugged his children in the safety of the mansion, Gregory couldn't shake the feeling that something was still to come, as if this was just the first battle in a larger war, as if Deborah, even absent, still cast her shadow over them. "Shall we have a snack?" Mrs. Eleanor suggested, breaking his dark thoughts. "I made that carrot cake Sophia loves." "Yes!" the girl exclaimed, her enthusiasm momentarily pushing away all worries. Gregory smiled, forcing himself to live in the moment, to appreciate this small victory. The future would bring what it had to bring. For now his children were safe, and that was all that mattered. "Carrot cake sounds perfect," he said, following Mrs. Eleanor to the kitchen, with Sophia skipping ahead and Bernard safe in his arms. Absolutely perfect. 6 months had passed since the court settlement. The Los Angeles winter, mild but humid, was showing its first signs of retreat, allowing the August sun to gradually warm the city. In the Allister mansion, much had changed. The first and most visible transformation was in the back garden. Where the old doghouse once stood, now bloomed an exuberant bed of white flowers. Lilies, jasmine, daisies, and roses formed a small oasis of peace. In the center, an elegant marble fountain murmured softly, its soothing sound warding off any echoes of painful memories. Sophia, now newly turned 9, knelt at the edge of the flower bed, carefully removing some weeds that tried to invade her precious garden. Her dark hair was tied in a loose braid, and specks of dirt adorned her denim overalls. Beside her, Bernard, who had just turned 16 months, tried to imitate her with his chubby little hands, although he often pulled up flowers instead of weeds. "No, Bernie, like this," Sophia patiently instructed, guiding her brother's hands. "Only the small green plants, see? The white flowers stay." The boy babbled something that vaguely sounded like flower, drawing a radiant smile from his sister. His vocabulary grew daily to everyone's delight in the house. From the veranda, Gregory watched the scene with a cup of coffee in hand. There was something deeply symbolic in that image. His children transforming a place of trauma into something beautiful. Together, healing the earth as they themselves were being healed. "They're closer every day," Mrs. Eleanor commented, approaching with a tray of freshly baked cookies. "Sophia looks like a little mother with the little one." "Yes, sometimes even too much," Gregory replied thoughtfully. "I wish she would allow herself to be more of a child." "Give it time, sir. Emotional wounds are like gardens. They need constant care, patience, and a lot of love to bloom." The housekeeper's simple wisdom always impressed him. In recent months, Mrs. Eleanor had become much more than an employee. She was a fundamental pillar in the reconstruction of the Alistair family. "I'll call the children for a snack," she said, heading to the garden. Gregory smiled as he watched Bernard toddle towards the tray of cookies, his little face lighting up with joy. Sophia followed more slowly, carefully removing the gardening gloves she had received for her birthday. "Dad, I think the lilies will produce more flowers this year," she announced proudly, sitting at the veranda table. "I read they get stronger after the first year." "Just like us," Gregory replied, affectionately ruffling his daughter's hair. Sophia smiled, a smile that finally reached her eyes. These small victories, a genuine smile, a spontaneous laugh, a night without nightmares, were the true milestones of progress for Gregory. The first months after the divorce had been difficult. Sophia had frequent nightmares, waking up screaming in the middle of the night. Bernard, although too young to articulate his fears, became visibly anxious with loud noises or sudden movements. Sessions with Dr. Marina, the child psychologist recommended by the pediatrician, became part of the family routine. "Trauma doesn't disappear overnight," Dr. Marina had explained in one of the first consultations. "But children have an incredible capacity for healing when they are in a safe and loving environment." Following the specialist's guidance, Gregory implemented a predictable and comforting routine. Mornings always began the same way. Breakfast together, where each talked about a good dream they had or something they looked forward to doing that day. Then Sophia went to school, now accompanied by her father, no longer by the driver, while Gregory worked from home until noon, always available if Bernard needed him. Afternoons were dedicated to the children, park outings, zoo visits, reading sessions in the garden, and evenings followed a calming ritual: bath, family dinner, stories before bedtime. Predictability created security. Constant presence rebuilt trust. Professionally, Gregory had made drastic changes. He delegated much of the day-to-day administration of the hotels to trusted executives. He refused international expansion projects that would require long trips. He transformed the home office into his main operations center, with video conferences replacing in-person meetings whenever possible. "Your children come first now," he said firmly, when his partner questioned the decisions. "The empire can wait. Their childhood cannot." His phone vibrated, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Felicity, his press advisor. "Breaking news. Deborah Morrison announced engagement to a Miami oil executive. Press may seek your comments. How do we proceed?" Gregory sighed. In recent months, Deborah had practically disappeared from the radar. After the divorce, she moved to Miami, Florida, and from what he knew through mutual acquaintances, immersed herself in the city's social circuit, reinventing herself as a sophisticated socialite and victim of an unhappy marriage. "No comment," he replied succinctly. Matter closed. Although the confidentiality agreement prevented both parties from publicly discussing the divorce details, Gregory occasionally heard rumors about Deborah making veiled insinuations at social events. Fortunately, the media had lost interest in the story after a few weeks, attracted by more recent scandals. "Dad, can I go to Louisa's house on Saturday?" Sophia asked, interrupting his thoughts. "Her mom is going to teach us how to make beaded bracelets." Louisa was a new schoolmate, one of the first friends Sophia had made since the traumatic events. The girls' growing closeness was an encouraging sign that Dr. Marina had celebrated as an important milestone in the healing process. "Of course, Princess. I'll call her mom later to arrange the time. And Bernard can come too. I promise to take care of him." Gregory smiled tenderly at Sophia's constant concern for her brother. "I think Bernard can stay with me this time. That way you have some time just for you and your friend. How about that?" Sophia's hesitation was brief but noticeable. The idea of separating from her brother, even for a few hours, still caused anxiety. "It's okay," Gregory gently assured her. "He'll be safe with me. And you deserve to have fun like a child your age, without worries." Slowly, Sophia nodded. "Okay, but can I call if I miss you?" "Any time," he guaranteed, hugging her. Later that day, After the children were in bed, Gregory sat in his office reviewing some documents. The change in his work routine had been challenging, but rewarding. Focusing on the strategic aspects of the business while delegating operational tasks allowed him to keep the company prosperous without sacrificing family time. A notification on his laptop indicated an incoming email. It was from Richard, his lawyer, with the subject "Important Update." Intrigued, Gregory opened the message. "Gregory, I've received information from a reliable source that Deborah will be in Los Angeles next week for a luxury brand launch at Westfield Century City Mall. Although she has respected the restraining order so far, I thought it prudent to alert you. I suggest reinforcing home security during this period and perhaps considering a short trip with the children. As always, I am available to discuss additional measures." Richard. A chill ran down Gregory's spine. Although he rationally knew that Deborah probably wouldn't risk everything she had gained in the settlement by violating the restraining order, his protective instinct was stronger. Clara Morrison's words echoed in his mind. For her, this is a game and losing is not an option. He stood up and walked to the window, observing the garden now illuminated only by moonlight. In the background, the white flower bed looked almost ethereal in the dim light, a beacon of peace in the darkness. "No," he decided, typing a reply to Richard. "We won't run, not this time. Reinforce security if you deem it necessary, but we will continue with our lives normally. She no longer has power over us." As he sent the message, Gregory felt a serenity he hadn't experienced in a long time. The fear still existed, perhaps it always would on some level, but it would no longer control them. The next morning, a sunny Saturday, Gregory proposed a special outing. "How about we visit the Brooklyn Botanic Garden? We can take a picnic, see the exotic flowers, and then stop by Central Park." Sophia jumped for joy at the idea, running to choose appropriate clothes for the adventure. Bernard, caught up in his sister's enthusiasm, clapped his hands in his high chair. On the way to the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, Sophia chatted animatedly about her favorite plants and the rare species she hoped to find. Gregory watched in the rearview mirror his daughter's bright face, that free, carefree, typically childlike expression that had disappeared during the dark months. "You know, Dad," Sophia said suddenly, "I think Mom would have liked our white flower garden." The mention of Camilla caught Gregory by surprise. Sophia rarely spoke about her mother spontaneously. "You think so?" "I'm sure. I remember her telling me that white flowers mean purity and new beginnings. That's why she always had a vase of white lilies on her bedside table." Gregory smiled, touched by the memory. "Your mother was very wise." "That's why I chose white flowers for the garden," Sophia continued. "Not just because of her, but because we needed a new beginning after everything." The wisdom in the 9-year-old girl's explanation left Gregory speechless. How could children, amidst so much suffering, find such profound meanings? The day at the Botanic Garden was perfect. Sophia ran along the shaded paths, identifying plants with the newfound knowledge from her botany books. Bernard, sometimes in his father's arms, sometimes crawling on the picnic lawn, delighted in the freedom and new textures. After lunch, when Bernard fell asleep under the shade of a leafy tree, Sophia sat beside her father, watching her brother. "Dad, I wanted to ask you something," she said, suddenly serious. "Of course, Princess. Anything. We're going to be okay, aren't we? Even if—" She hesitated, her fingers nervously playing with the hem of her dress. "Even if she tries to come back." Gregory realized that despite all the assurances and the apparent normalization of life, the fear of Deborah still haunted Sophia. Perhaps she had heard something about her ex-stepmother's visit to the city. "Sophia, look at me," he asked, gently turning his daughter's face to look at him. "Yes, we're going to be okay. No matter what happens, no matter who tries to hurt us, we will always be okay because we are together. And I will never, ever again allow anyone to hurt you or your brother. Promise?" "I promise with all my heart." The girl seemed to ponder her father's words, as if evaluating them with the same seriousness with which a scientist evaluates a theory. "You know, sometimes I'm afraid to sleep," she confessed. "But then I remember you're there and that Bernard needs me to be brave. Then the fear gets smaller." "You are the bravest person I know, Sophia Alistair." "Braver than Spider-Man?" she asked with a mischievous smile. "Much braver," he assured, playing along. "Spider-Man has superpowers. You face the world just with your brave heart." The following week, Deborah was indeed in Los Angeles for the luxury brand launch. Her face appeared in some social columns, always accompanied by her new fiancé, a middle-aged man with a serious expression and cautious eyes. Gregory saw the photos online but felt nothing but a vague relief that she seemed to have moved on. As predicted by Richard, she respected the restraining order. There were no attempts at contact, not even indirect ones. The launch happened, and she returned to Miami, Florida, without incident. 2 weeks later, on a particularly warm night for late August, Gregory was woken by a sound he hadn't heard in months, Sophia's distressed crying during a nightmare. He rushed to her room, finding her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. "She was here," Sophia sobbed as her father hugged her. "She had taken Bernard to the doghouse, but this time you didn't come back to save us." "It was just a bad dream, my love." Gregory soothed her, rocking her gently. "We're all fine, safe. Do you want to go see Bernard to make sure?" Sophia nodded, and together they went to the baby's room. Bernard slept soundly, one of his little arms hugging his favorite teddy bear. The sight of her safe and calm brother seemed to calm Sophia immediately. "See? He's fine. We're all fine." Back in her room, Sophia asked her father to stay until she fell asleep again. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Gregory stroked his daughter's hair as she fought against sleep. "Dad," she murmured, almost asleep, "I wanted to tell you something." "What, princess?" "I'm not so afraid of her anymore. I'm afraid of the memories, but not of her. Dr. Marina said that means I'm getting stronger." "And you are," he confirmed, admiring his daughter's resilience. "Stronger every day. You know what else Dr. Marina said? That one day we'll remember that rainy day without feeling pain. We'll remember it as something bad that taught us to be stronger together." Gregory felt tears forming in his eyes. "She's right. One day we'll look back and see how far we've come." Sophia yawned, her eyes closing heavily. "I think we're already coming far, Dad. Like the flowers in the garden, we're growing even after the storm." When Sophia's breathing became regular and deep, indicating she had fallen asleep, Gregory remained by her side, contemplating the wisdom in his daughter's words. Children had a unique way of simplifying life's most complex truths. In the months that followed, Deborah's shadow gradually faded from their lives. Mentions of her became increasingly rare, until her name was almost never spoken in the house. Sophia's nightmares decreased in frequency, as did Bernard's separation anxiety. The following spring, the white flower garden was in full splendor. New flower beds had been added, forming a miniature labyrinth that delighted Bernard, now running with his chubby legs. Sophia, increasingly confident in her gardening skills, had begun to cultivate some more exotic species, guided by a specialized book her father had given her. One sunny afternoon, while supervising the installation of a small swing for Bernard near the garden, Gregory received an unexpected call. It was Clara Morrison. "Mr. Hallister, I hope I'm not bothering you," she began, her voice immediately bringing back memories of that decisive meeting at the cafe. "Not at all. In fact, I never had the opportunity to properly thank you for what you did for my family." Clara chuckled softly. "It was nothing. I just did what any decent person would do." There was a pause. "I called because I thought you should know." Deborah cancelled her engagement. Apparently, the executive discovered some inconsistencies in her stories and hired a private investigator. Gregory absorbed the news with a calm that surprised him. "I see. Is he okay?" "From what I heard, yes. He ended the relationship before things got worse. Deborah is furious, of course. But now she's in the sights of his family, who have far more resources and influence than she imagined. And you're telling me this because I thought you should be aware. When Deborah is thwarted, she tends to look for scapegoats for her anger. And you, well, you were the only one who truly stood up to her and won." Gregory looked at the garden, where Sophia was teaching Bernard to make flower crowns with daisies. The peace in that scene was almost palpable. "I appreciate the warning, Clara, but we won't let fear control us, not anymore. I understand. I just wanted to make sure you were prepared." After hanging up, Gregory did not share the information with anyone, neither with Richard nor with the security team. Clara's call remained as a reminder that the past could occasionally cast shadows on the present, but it didn't have to define the future. That night during dinner, Sophia surprised everyone with an announcement. "I've decided I want to take ballet lessons again." Gregory almost choked on his juice. Sophia had given up ballet after the trauma with Deborah, who frequently used the activity as a bargaining chip in her manipulations. "Are you sure, Princess? I thought you didn't like it anymore." I always liked it, Sophia corrected, playing with her fork. I was just afraid. Of everything, really. But Louisa started taking classes, and her teacher seems nice. Can I try? Of course you can, Gregory replied, disguising the emotion in his voice. This was a significant milestone, Sophia choosing to resume something she loved, despite the painful associations. 2 weeks later, Gregory was sitting in the audience of a small ballet performance for parents. Sophia, in her new pink leotard and ballet slippers that were still a little too big, looked nervous but determined as she awaited her turn to dance with her beginner classmates. When the music began, a soft version of Swan Lake, and Sophia took her first dance steps, Gregory realized he was witnessing something deeply symbolic. Like the white flowers in the garden that had replaced the old doghouse, Sophia was transforming memories of pain into beauty and grace. Beside him, Bernard clapped clumsily, enchanted by his sister's movements. Mrs. Eleanor, who had insisted on coming to watch her girl, discreetly wiped away a tear. The dance was simple, suitable for beginners, but there was something in Sophia's concentrated expression, in the way she completely surrendered to the moment, that transcended technique. It was the dance of someone who had faced fear and chosen to move forward. At the end of the performance, when Sophia ran into her father's arms, flushed and radiant, Gregory felt a cycle completing. The scars still existed. They always would in some form, but they were no longer open wounds. They were marks of battles won, testaments to resilience. "Did you see, Dad? I managed to do all the steps without making a mistake," Sophia exclaimed, her eyes shining with pride. "I did, my love. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." On the way home, with Bernard asleep in the back seat and Sophia softly humming the recital music, Gregory reflected on the journey of the past few months. They had moved from darkness and fear to a place of light and hope. It hadn't been easy. Many nights of tears, intensive therapy, occasional relapses, but every step had been worth it. "Dad," Sophia called, interrupting his thoughts, "can we plant orchids in the garden? I read they mean strength and beauty." "Of course we can," he replied, smiling at his daughter in the rearview mirror. "I think they'll be perfect for our garden of new beginnings." Sophia smiled, satisfied, and returned to humming her song. Outside the car window, the sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. A new day would arrive tomorrow, bringing its own challenges and joys, but now, for the first time in a long time, Gregory Allister was truly at peace. The mansion that had once been a place of shadows and whispers had transformed into a true home, filled with laughter, music, and the scent of white flowers growing where only pain had once existed. Wounds had turned into wisdom, fear into courage, distance into connection. And at the center of it all, uniting them like intertwined roots in an exuberant garden, was love. Imperfect, sometimes clumsy, but deep and unwavering. The kind of love that no storm, however fierce, could uproot.